This is the time to come together. Keep Liberia safe forever. So open up your heart and let the unity begin. Love is all we need to make it stand. Let's cultivate one another. Learn to live together as brothers and sisters. Without togetherness, we won't have a peace of mind.
Hello, my name is Hassan Kiau, and I'm one of your moderators for this year's edition of the National Convention of the Association of Liberian Journalists in the Americas. Today, we're going to have a panel discussion, challenges facing women's political participation. So, a few years ago, Liberian women got their way to have, at the bare minimum, 30% representation in the country's politics. It came after the legislature passed the instrument into law and subsequently signed by then President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who happened to be Liberia's first female president. But it didn't come so easy. The women had to fight off stiff resistance from within their own ranks, but more from their dominating male counterparts, who reckoned women representation must be earned and not be given on the silver platter. With the 2023 general elections just over a year away, the stakes couldn't be any higher. The issue became a hot-button topic during the reign of President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf 17 years ago. Liberian women had long been marginalized and condemned to the back by their male counterparts. That's the perception and the tradition most Liberians also hold. Despite this achievement, women are still underrepresented. So what's the cause? I have Melissa Annan, who will join me later, who's my co-hosts on this panel discussion. And so this edition of the 2022 National Convention of ARJA will be looking at the women participation and the challenges they face. But first, before we go to our panelists, let's get a word from our president, Joe Mason.
Thank you so much, Hassan. I think you set the stage perfectly. We at ARJA are concerned about the participation of women in our political process, more so now that we're about to go into general elections come next year. Our overall topic for this convention is sustaining Liberia's democracy now and in the future, the media and the 2023 general elections. But we thought it would be important to put a spotlight also on the participation of women or the lack thereof. And we thought we invite some folks who have the experience to be able to discuss this topic in some depth. And I know you will introduce your panelists officially later on. I'm so excited with the slew of candidates, panelists we have to discuss this topic. And I'm hopeful that at the end of the day, the information that they bring to us will help to put the conversation forward. So that way we can begin to see more women involved in the political process. So before I leave you, Hassan, I want to thank our panelists. I know you will introduce them in depth, but Madam Cooper, thank you for coming on. You've been tried, you've gone through this process a number of times, and I'm excited that you again contesting for the 2023 national elections. Madam Edith Gonglo-Ware, who also former senatorial candidate, superintendent of Nima County, and Alpha Daffy Sikwini. Alpha brings a lot of background. He brings a lot of wealth of experience. They've done a lot of investigation into electoral matters. So I think this is going to be a stimulating discussion, and I'm hoping the folks out there we have a great time. Thank you so much.
Many thanks there to the president of ARJA, Mr. Joe Mason. Of course, I think he let the cat out of the bag already. So like he said, we have three panelists. We have Magdala Cooper, presidential candidate, the Movement for One. We have either Gonglo Wei, who will come later on. He's a former senatorial candidate. And we have Alpha Dafe Senkpeni. Should I call you former journalist or you say a journalist? Oh, sorry, you're muted.
I'm a journalist. Not a former journalist.
Sometimes they call me. Sometimes I struggle with being a former journalist or I don't know whatever title they give me. But anyway, welcome to all of you, and we will be, of course, going through this, and time is fast spent. So let's go to Ms. Magdala Cooper. First of all, let's give you a little intro. Magdala Maki Cooper, also known by many as Liberia's Angel, was born in Monrovia, Liberia. Cooper achieved academic excellence in high school and was subsequently awarded a full academic scholarship to the College of New Jersey, where she earned a degree in electronic communications. She established the Magdala Cooper Foundation. The Magdala Cooper Foundation's mission is to educate, train, and motivate Africa's most vulnerable children, disadvantaged youth, and marginalized women to become productive contributors to their nation's economic, social, and political development. The Magdala Cooper Foundation will open its STEAM Academy for Girls in 2022. The foundation strives to foster future leaders who take pride in themselves and their country. Magdala Cooper's dedication to social welfare has transformed the lives of hundreds of vulnerable women, children, and youth. Cooper is often called upon to be a keynote speaker for organizations worldwide. Additionally, Cooper has received several awards in response to her international relationships and service to individuals nationwide. Pushing forward, Cooper, a 2023 Liberian presidential candidate, is leading the way by pursuing the Movement for One Liberia. This accredited political party provides democratic rights and civil liberties to every Liberian. Cooper's unwavering desire to build a political environment representative of all citizens will foster a robust, fair, and inclusive republic. So we'd like to welcome Magdala Cooper to the discussion.
Thank you so much.
Good. I mean, I look at your just. I'm sure it's just a tip of the iceberg, I suppose.
Which portion?
I mean, just what I've just read. It's just almost, I'm just skimming through.
Right. No, thank you for such a wonderful introduction, Hassan. And it is a privilege and a pleasure for me to be here with you at the Algiers convention. And I want to especially thank the founder, Mr. Joe Mason, for including women into this dialogue. And that's all of you and what you represent is what we hope to have in our nation, where all citizens and all people of Liberia are included in the dialogues. And so thank you very much for this opportunity to have a special panel on the issue women are facing in our nation.
Many thanks there for that opening statement. We also have with us one of our colleagues, Alpha Dafe Senkpeni. He's a journalist. I sometimes struggle with that too, to call him former journalist, but he's a journalist, and he's a multimedia Liberian journalist and a fact checker with over 16 years experience in mainstream journalism. He has worked for several national and international media institutions. Senkpeni holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in mass communication from the University of Liberia and a diploma in development and new media studies from the Renmin University in Beijing, China. He is graduating senior of the Louis Arthur Grant School of Law at the University of Liberia, and I must say here, the guy is an A student. Until August 2020, Senkpeni served as deputy editor of Front Page newspaper. Before that, he was the radio and program director of Laksa Radio, owned by the Liberian Agricultural Company in Grand Bassa County. As an international journalist, Senkpeni has reported for China Daily based in Beijing, China, News Deeply based in New York, USA, and TRT World in Ankara, Turkey. Recently, Senkpeni is the executive director and editor-in-chief of Local Voices in Liberia, Liberia's largest rural-based journalism network. He has held this role since 2015 as a founding member of the organization. The network has implemented several media development projects for the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, through collaborations with the International Media Development Organization, Internews. The LVL is currently implementing a new 2-year project for the European Union since January 2021. He's also a senior member of the Press Union of Liberia, where he is a member of the Edward Wilmot Blyden Intellectual Committee. Welcome to you, Mr. Alpha Dafe Simpeni.
Thank you very much, Hassan, for that introduction. And once again, I'd like to say it's a privilege to be on this panel alongside major pace setters like Madam Magdala Cooper and Madam Edith Gonglo Ware. I think this conversation is very important, especially as we near 2023. It's a very polarizing conversation. But I think if we can dissect the issues and recommend and make some proffer some very great recommendations, it might probably help to refine the situation and probably ensure that women participation in the 2023 election is smooth. Probably there might be challenges, but basically it will help improve the ecosystem, the political ecosystem of our elections in 2023. So I'm happy to be here and I look forward to a great discussion.
Many thanks there to Alpha. And so shall we just go straight away and maybe you, after you've already given your opening statements. So let me ask Madam Magdala Cooper. Is she on?
I am on.
Okay. I'm sorry, the switcher hasn't switched, but we just, I think the guy is a little bit sorry. We probably may be facing some difficulty to bringing you in, but we need to bring in Ms. Magdala Cooper on the screen, because one of the things we want to find out is that, of course, there has been this fight ever since about women participation in politics. You remember the statement attributed to President Muhammadu Buhari,
Right.
where he told his wife she belongs to the kitchen, the living room, and the other room. First of all, let's start from that end. Do you think Liberians or Liberian men still consider women, or have they relegated Liberian women to that level still?
Well, one of the things I try to avoid doing is to think for people and to try to figure out what I think is going on in their minds. And with 5.3 million people in our beloved country, it would be impossible to actually just try to figure out what they think. But one of the things I try to focus on is the rule of law, the Constitution. The Constitution is, every man and woman have two books that govern their lives. If you are a religious person, you have your religious book. For the Christians, you have the Bible. For the Muslims, you have the Quran. And that's the first book that governs every man and woman's life. And then secondly, the book that governs your citizenship, the nation from which you hail. And it's called the Constitution. And so those are the books that we must always refer to when we're talking about our rights and our position in the world that we live in. And so instead of second guessing what people think, let's go to the Constitution, the rule of law. That's supposed to be the highest book that governs our nation. We first have a problem with that book. Is our Constitution, but women have been excluded from having rights in the Constitution. They talk about equality in the Constitution and all these things, but women rights are not protected in our Constitution. And this is where we have the first problem. And so what a society through tradition, religion, or cultural thing, women do not have a right. For me, it's going back to the Constitution, because I know I have a right. Just as my male counterparts or my brothers, I have a right. 100%. This world, this earth is the real estate that we all have equal rights to. And so I don't want to go too much into it, but what a Buhari make a statement about women's position, that's his personal position. And as a leader, those are things we have to avoid saying, because it just makes us look like we're not ready to govern. Because when you're governing, you have to protect the life and liberty and property of every citizen that belongs to your jurisdiction. And so if Buhari blunders, it's not a blunder that we should be repeating all the time. And another thing I would say is in Liberia, I feel that women have been a backbone of our economy, of our society for a very long time. And so to exclude the representation, participation of women is only causing Liberia to go backwards, in which we all have seen over the past few years, Liberia has been regressing versus progressing because we have chopped the second leg off and we're trying to run a race and we don't have a second leg. We're running on one leg. So women are the second leg, men are the one leg, and women are the second leg. So we are hurting ourselves by not including women in all of these things. But and let me also stress on the fact that when we talk about Liberia being a democratic nation, we have to, besides the constitution rights, we have to look at the definition of democracy and what democracy means. And maybe I can yield here, and we can discuss that a later time in the conversation.
Okay, so let me piggyback on the intro that I gave, because during the fight for the 30%, so to speak,
Right.
I think people within your own ranks, I'm talking about women,
Right.
some women were even against getting giving Liberian women 30% on a civil platter. They felt that you should earn it. You should earn it instead of letting people to legislate, giving you a right to be represented. People should see you as you, and you should merit it instead of just giving that to you. Say, hey, you know what? Here's a freebie. What do you make of that?
Well, why should women be giving 30%, first of all? And for anyone who think 30% was too much to ask for, it makes me wonder about that person's sanity. Because if we open up the country, especially with regards to, let's go back to the Constitution again. The Constitution have failed to include women's rights and protection and political participation, and even violence against women are not protected. Women are not protected in our Constitution. So there's a need for amendment to our Constitution. And this is something that really startled me, although I was a very young woman in the early 1980s. And when the Constitution was put on hold to make sure everyone's rights were included, there was so much happening at the time, and the Constitution was put on hold. In 1986, a new Constitution was given to us. So we canceled the 1847 Constitution. Here's a brand new Constitution that includes the right of all citizens of Liberia. But we have failed to include the rights of women in that Constitution. And so let's move forward. For anyone to think that 30% was so much too much to ask for, I wonder about that person's sanity. Because why should we give men the right to run our country however way they want? Their rights are protected. But when it comes to women, we're saying, oh, why you want 30%? You want 30% for what? Why you go work for a fight for a? Given the structure and the statures of our stature of our country right now, and we're asking women why you want 30%, to me it's ridiculous. And anyone who asks why women should be given special privilege, it should be equal opportunities for all citizens, irrespective of their tribe, ethnicity, their gender, and their whatever way they define themselves. It should be equal opportunity for all citizens of the land of Liberia.
But people might argue that it should be based on your likability and maybe your persona, or maybe you should merit it instead of just giving certain. It's
not just giving. The law in the election law in Article 4.B and 4.B says political parties must endeavor to ensure that when they're submitting the list of candidates, they should include 30% of either gender. But whoever crafted that piece of language failed to realize that political parties were established by men, ran by men, and men were put easily on the tickets. Look at last election, the midterm election. You had the presidential general election, then you had a midterm election, and we were fighting to get women on tickets. The ruling establishment, the CDC establishment, a party, submitted a list of 15 men. And when we went to answer, that the ruling party, the president said he feminist in chief, and then he get one woman on the ticket, on the ballot paper that is given to the election commission. 15 men. And when we asked, they said, oh, they couldn't find credible women. How many credible women in CDC? How many credible women in the Republic of Liberia? You want to tell me that CDC party could not find one woman to put on the ticket? You go submit 15 candidates for 15 different counties, and you don't find one woman? It was a disgrace. Because the executive committees of these political parties are all men. They have this thing called women wing. They get youth wing, but they're not executive member of the institution, and the decisions come from the executive, not the woman wing, not the man wing. I mean, the children wing or the youth wing. So imagine the executive make a decision. Oh, who you carrying? You put my body, man. You put my body. That my picking there. You put. No one is talking on that table. Say, wait, where's the women? And this is the demise of the Republic of Liberia because the decision to get the candidates on the ballot comes from the executive, not the women wing and the youth wing. That's why you see youth are not oftentimes giving the opportunity to get their names on the ballots or even on the list of candidates that are submitted to NEC, because NEC will then go look at your credential, you pay your money, and NEC will accept you. But when there is no woman, let's say you go to buffet. Oh, I see buffet here. Buffet get plenty different option. And then they didn't get rest on the buffet for Liberia. Now we let our rest. We let me for a group more. I let Pamato. They didn't get that. What I'm supposed to do? I can't say let Pamato. Pamato is not there. You get my drift, my brother.
Yeah.
So this is the problem. So for someone to come and say they're crafting a law, say political parties must endeavor to ensure. So the political party then start playing. I know they call it smart or stupid also. They say, oh, but they say more endeavor. When they go to the dictionary and say endeavor means you must try to put women in there. They didn't hold political parties accountable.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so political parties ran by men, for men. They only put their friend on the ticket, on the ballot, on the paper to get to the ballot box. So there were no women to be voted for. So this is the problem. So when people say, why would the women that want special privilege to say them all, get a 30% mandatory law? They say either gender. It wasn't, they didn't say woman. But only because political parties are ran by men. So you saw men on the ticket. So I run a political party. I am the first woman in the Republic of Liberia to have established a political party giving all genders equal representation, giving them a platform to run for office, whether you're young, whether you're disabled, whether you man or you woman, as long as you have Liberia has your interest, we give you equal opportunity, including the executive board members.
So do you have Alpha? I will come to you pretty soon. But in your political party, how many men do you have?
We have every role we have in our party. We have female and male counterparts. We have a chairman that's a man. We have a co-chair that's a woman.
Or vice versa?
Vice versa. We have two youth chairs. We have a youth chair who's a woman, and we have a young man who also co-chair with her on the youth initiatives. Similar thing with the young women as well. So we have a disabled wing. We have both female and male counterparts, so that when decisions are made, there are two people making a decision. I follow the teachings of Jesus Christ, and in my book, my religious book, they say God made man and he may help me, right? So the understanding was, look, you might make something, maybe she will catch it, or she might think that something you will solve it. We have to have everyone included at the decision-making tables. So, for example, and what this causes, you see, is a whole evolution. And the evolution starts from the political parties, the executive committee. Then it goes to the NEC, the Election Commission. Then those who get elected now, that's why we have out of 30 senators, we only have 2 women, because the political parties are not giving the women the platform. So we got 2 women senators today. Why would we have 2 women senators out of 30 senators? And don't even go down to the lower house. We got only about 8 women in there.
Out of 73 or so.
It's a disgrace.
Well, let's hold you right there. Let's come to Alpha. Alpha has been around for a while. I think he's been covering some of those events. But then let's look at, generally speaking, Alpha. What do you think the numbers are, or are they realistic right now?
Absolutely not. I mean, Madam Cooper talked a little more about the political problem and maybe what are the issues that are unfolding right now. But the statistics, if you read the numbers, you get to know that we are performing terribly,
right,
when it comes to gender equity as it relates to politics. Because right now, Liberia is the 156th country in the world out of 162 country on the index, on the global index. That means we are way down the list when it comes to gender inequality. We are performing dismally looking at even the numbers as it relates to national parliament representation
Mm-hmm.
in a sub-region is 26% for sub-regional Africa, 17% in West Africa, in Liberia. So it shows that we are just performing poorly when it comes to women participation in politics. But let's look at the problem. I mean, that's the problem. But let's look at where does the problem come from. You get to understand that a couple of things might be the main reasons. One will be the cultural background of our country. It's a more patriarchy country, and sometimes people think that based on these cultural beliefs and these gender stereotypes, it drives people perception about women and their role they can play in leadership, even though recent history have shown that women in politics and women in leadership can do pretty well, probably better than their male counterparts. Say, for example, we said the history of Madame Salif being the first president. I mean, there were some issues in her governance or her government, the two terms, but pretty much she resuscitated our economy, brought her back amongst the Committee of Nations. She showcased some very good leadership abilities globally. You know, it shows that we women can do better. And if you look at some of those who helped to steer the ship during her regime, they were women, and they took some very great decisions and made some brilliant contributions to the reconstruction of our country. But in as much as that happened, the public, I mean, the general cultural issues, stereotypes still contribute to female participation being low. And in addition, there's this new phenomenon of weaponizing information against women. And that comes from the background of the same stereotype that women are of lesser value when it comes to playing leadership role. And whenever a woman comes about to show some interest in participating, she's often demonized. Sometimes the standards are not the same for a man and a woman. They put women at a different standard and put men at a different standard. I think all of these factors contribute to the public perception about women leadership. And I think until we can deal with these social cultural problems as to how we present a woman candidate or female participation in politics, we still do have a long way to go. So those are the contributing factors. And Hassan, I would say, until we can deal with those issues, until we can deal with this information that are cultivated to target women, until we can deal with hate speech that are actually designed to attack women and weaken their chances of getting popular in a political party. Because even intra political politics, you find out that people who are opponents of women will use these strategies against them, these disinformation, hate speech strategies against women, making them to feel lesser of value or less value in the political arena. And if you take those situations to the national politics, they also participate, they also contribute. And as a journalist for covering politics and covering human interest story, looking at social issues, and even as a fact checker right now, I observe that these are key problems that are affecting women participation. The weaponization of information against women, as well as cultural stereotypes, gender stereotypes, and they become so entrenched.
But then, looking back at our existence, say for instance, in those days, or someone would say in the olden days, or long 10, 15, 12 years ago, our parents used to send, you know, um, the boys to school and the girls will stay at home or go to the farms because they felt that probably just what you alluded to, that the women were less of benefit to them except to bear babies for other people. But time has long gone, over 20 years. We see more girls going to school nowadays. We see more women graduating from college and they're holding various positions. Why why should we still be having such an issue even in today's Liberia?
And that's the question everybody's asking. But just as you reference issues of the past, these bad practices of the past are still haunting the present and probably cast a very doom or dark cloud over the future of women participation in politics. Like I said to you, cultural stereotypes. That is to say that, I mean, it has been proven time without number that female or women can be great leaders, can be great. I mean, there are a lot of examples around the world, a lot of examples, even in Liberia. But these cultural stereotypes, these cultural beliefs, Liberia being a patriarchy kind of society where men feel more manly, they feel more authoritative, they feel that they have more authority when it comes to calling the shots in the community, even in the family. There are a lot of men who think that they should be driving the cause of the family, all of the decisions should pass by them. I believe that yes, men should make decisions, but that should be done, in consultation with the woman, and probably the woman should also make decisions, and the men either agree and accept the decision. But these cultural issues still contributes to how people leave their homes, go into the public sphere, go into professional careers, and drive these ideas because they grew up learning and believing that women should not take leadership role because they are weak, because they are not tough, they are not firm when it comes to making decisions. So because of these entrenched beliefs, even though there have been significant efforts to kind of weaken, or if you like, dissuade people from these perceptions, but they still exist. And because they still exist, opponents of women politicians will use it in order to play to the emotions of voters, to play to the emotions of people who should contribute to the decision making process. They play with them. Like I said, they weaponize information. They create this information about a woman, that this woman has had a past, she has had multiple relationships. These are things that come up. Instead of their opponents discussing, instead of their opponent discussing the qualification of a woman politician, what does she bring to the table? They try to dilute the conversation using disinformation and hate speech strategies to target these women opponents. And because they know that the society, bulk of the voters, bulk of those who should make the decision, will obviously rely on these kind of information, and they already have existing bias because of the cultural background, because of their cultural beliefs, because of how they grew up, what they were made to believe 20 years ago or 30 years ago. It's easy. It's easy to play to their emotion and probably get them to develop these stereotypes against the woman a politician, or the female politician in the political process. That's
In,
that's the foundational problem.
in fact, I was just about to also ask you to follow up on that. So, for instance, I mean, you made the case where men would normally want to, should I say, bash the women. She has so many relationships, but the men too, in fact, have had more relationships than the women. So why don't the women too be stronger on pointing these ills about men? If I mean, it's not about probably maybe trying to avoid going, being going off tangent with the key messages. But that could be, since they are using that as a key message, why can't they also use similar message too to ward off these fights from the men and just sit there
Because
and allow the men to say everything worse about them?
because our society thinks that a man who is a polygamous, who is involved with multiple relationships, is a good thing. I mean, the man can have as many women he wants to have.
That's
He can
moral.
have as many concubines. The society does not see that as something wrong. On the other hand, it is wrong when a woman does it, because that's the cultural standards that are set in our society. And that plays against a woman candidate or a female candidate who, and I don't think elections and leadership contestation should be about, those issues. I mean, issues that are not cogent to the discourse. People have had their past, people have their present. I don't think people should be judged or I agree that sometimes you want to go into the past of a person who wants to take public office because you want to know how credible this person is, how transparent he or she is, or how what he or she brings to the table when it comes to his or her attributes. But I don't think taking things out of context because you want to create unfavorable condition for a candidate should be the crux of the discussion in a political arena. But the bottom line, Hassan, is that the society put women in a different category when it comes to moral
Yes.
qualifications or moral measurement. So because of that, the woman cannot sustain an argument in a Liberian political condition or in a Liberian political system, whereas she wants to go toe to toe or neck to neck against a man. That makes her unfavorable because nasty things going to come out about her. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be absolutely demeaning and disrespectful. In my mind, these are wrong messaging. These are weaponization of information. These are hate speech. It should not be used in politics, and it should not be used against women who are contesting elections because it makes them to feel lesser of competent. It makes them to be judged wrongly in a society. And I think the media sometimes contributes to these kind of disinformation and hate speech campaign against women participation in politics. And I will talk a little more about that later on as we progress.
Okay, so let me go back to Madam Magdala Cooper on this topic because it's getting to a point now where I think we go back to before the Civil War. Not much was heard, or little or nothing was heard about women participation or equal opportunity or equal rights for women. And this came up only after the Civil War, especially when men were underneath the beds and while the women were in the line of fire,
Right.
fetching food for the family. But it became even more demanding after the Beijing 1995 conference,
Right.
where women, of course, women felt that they should step up to the plate. Why all this time, only after the Civil War, only after Beijing 1995?
Well, people sometimes would like to play like they don't understand, the laws or the conversation that's being had because the Beijing conference in 1995 instructed governments or asked governments across the world to see to it that they made more room for women at the decision-making table. And of course, since 1995, you can see that our numbers were at 9% female political representation and participation. That's one of the lowest numbers, even with regards to other African countries. Like Rwanda holds the highest number of women participation and representation at the highest offices in the country, 63%. And you go around, even like you have countries like Senegal, you have countries like Morocco, higher than Liberia. Nigeria is also very low. I think Nigeria is probably at 13, 11%, if I'm not mistaken. So you wonder what causes the mindset of these particular countries. You have Rwanda that just came out of a civil war, a civil conflict, internal conflict with a genocide. And you had a president who used political will and said, today we're going to pass this mandate that all political institutions must have women on the list of candidates that goes to the election house for that would eventually become their names would be seen on the ballot boxes. Again, I keep repeating this because through the rule of law is the only way we're going to change it. We cannot change it through tradition. We cannot change it through religion. We're not going to change the mindset of culture and society. Art imitate culture. Culture imitate arts. When we have these movies that's being made and it shows women in lesser positions, society gonna imitate that. And then the art who creating these scripts are gonna still, make movies where women are in a lesser position. And Alpha was absolutely right with what he said, his projections. But it's you cannot necessarily change your society in a short time, but you can change laws. Laws can be changed in a short time. We need a massive referendum in our country. There are 21 items that needs to be changed, including female political representation. The language of our constitution has to change. Today, our constitution refers to everyone as he. Here's my copy of my constitution. I carry everywhere with me. Everything in here refers to he. how do you then expect the young people who are of education age to understand that the first book of our country says everything pertaining to men, men, men? It's going to be difficult for us to keep trying to change the mindset when the rule of law does not protect our women. And
Do you think we need education on this matter? And then, like you talk about the arts. Let's say, for instance, the Nigerian movies that a lot of people watch. They show this masculinity, in the movie
right,
where Nigerian women sometimes, I mean, are at the lowest ebb,
right,
or the men are beating on the women,
right.
or something of that sort. And it is being shown all over Liberia. We watch it. Don't you think that's that's one of the one of the factors responsible for that women should be condemned to the back, like Buhari said?
Well, that Buhari statement always irks me because I'm so disappointed in someone like Buhari to make such a statement.
I
Um,
know, I know you
it
thought.
always irks me, but because you have people who follow certain people, and people might think that's such a positive thing to do when it was so wrong. But look, my position is women also do not have rights to the economy. Men control the economy. Until women have start having their own resources to establish institutions where laws can be set, you have these male dominated institutions. Except good men like yourself and Alpha and every other guy like Joe creates laws within the institutions that you run that says I will not tolerate gender imbalance here. Everything we do, everyone will be represented, both male, female, equally represented. Until we have men like you who would change, start with yourself, and that's how the society would then change because we are a mere reflection. And Alpha said so many things that he was on point with. Um, how women are viewed. It starts with you and myself to change that. It starts with men who cares, not men who just self-label to say, "Oh, I'm feminist, I'm this and that," but your actions, portray something different. So for we, the women who are vying for office, yes, there are a lot of hate speeches thrown against us. Yes, there are a lot of language used against us. And Alpha again repeating what he said. He was right where you have our male counterparts who got 15 children with 15 different women or women. When they talk about women now who get 1, 2 children with different men, they say, "Oh, she hope Joe, she water police." But the people who get 15 children with different women, then they had sit in high position there. They talking about them that women they're putting them more on. But that's how you see, because they got resources. So when they arrive, because they have starved the people and put the people at the lowest common denomination, the people have to, aside with where their bread coming from or their little first face coming from. And that's the problem, even with the women. A lot of women want to run for office, but they got to go side with those policies and mindset of men who are giving them the money.
But there's also a perception. Let me just say a perception that when a woman knows too much or has too much,
She becomes a problem.
she becomes a man.
No, we're not trying to be men. And that for sure. Women,
Because she feels just like the men does that. Look here, I'm the boss, and it should be my way or the highway. What do you think?
well, I don't think women are trying to be men. Women have always been protector of society. Women are the ones we are 50% of the society and we give birth to the other 50%. So we are always there to take care of everyone's need. Even if our needs are not met, women are still trying to take care of and make sure everyone's met. And that is why women's style of leadership is different. When a woman is sitting at a decision-making table, she's concerned about our parents, our children, the household, our husbands. We're concerned about everyone's needs. And so imagine women being at a decision making table when the national operating budget is being crafted. How much supposed to go to healthcare? Oh, my people, everybody will get sick. We need good hospital, we need good medicine. All the children will need to go to school because, at 18, 19, 20 years old, adults who are kind of knocking on their door, they must be prepared educationally to be able to enter the job market because that's when they'll leave their childhood behind now and they will enter the space for working. So they must be prepared to work. How many of our citizens? We got 5.3 million people. How many of our citizens can read and write their name? According to UNESCO, UNESCO said we got 37% adult literacy rate. That's very low compared to Ghana that got a 76% adult literacy rate. When a person is not able to read and write, how are they supposed to participate in the job market? We talk about our agenda for Liberia. We want to bring an economy, create an economy, bring investors. Do we have a job market? What kind of job do we have to now start focusing on bringing for the people who can't read and write? That means we're almost at 70% adult illiteracy rate. Illiteracy rate, people who can't read and write their own name. What kind of a future are we proposing? And so when Alpha talks about the miseducation or the hate speeches, the misinformation, disinformation, only according to the communication definition, it says that people who are uneducated or highly emotional are the people who are easier to convince of anything to persuade. Or y'all hear the news, Alpha now do the crime over here. They believe it without asking any question. Oh, you hear the news? They woman want to run for office, but she got 3 children with 3 different men. You see that they accept information without knowing this, having data or some sort of support information behind it. And this is a problem with our society. When we leave, and again, this is not this administration's problem. It is a problem that has been in Liberia for a very long time. So several administrations have failed our people in terms of educating our people so that when somebody come and say, oh, you know that Hassan man? That Hassan man just stole money from over there. They will say, where's the facts? An educated society will say, where's the fact? You can't tell me Hassan stole money. I just believe you. But when you leave our people uneducated, where they can't even read the Bible, and they get in some pastor who even don't know nothing about the Bible or the Quran, some imam who don't know nothing about the Quran, he's giving the information. Disinformation is all part of the problem. That is why we have to work on bringing in administration that will focus on educating our people. So when they say, oh, women are supposed to be in the kitchen, they will say, why? I know women who can work. I know women who can do this, who can run companies. I know women who are innovative. You see, so we have hurt our country, and now it is all of our responsibility to fix our country.
Okay, we have a
sorry.
Great. So we have a question for you, and it's from Francis Dan.
Hi.
Hello.
You stressed a lot of important points as it relates political sector. But what comes to mind is, like you said, there are a lot of people on the pulpit that will kind of misinterpret the Bible.
Right.
The Bible says the man is the head of the home. And the woman, the man should love his wife as Christ loved the church.
Church, correct.
Yeah. Now my question is, a lot of the preachers have said these things, and what is inscripted in the minds of our women, especially those in the rural areas, is that the man is the head. And when it comes to love, what the man has to do in loving his wife is to provide for the children and the mother. So he does that on a regular basis. He gets up in the morning, gets his wife, and they go on the farm. When it comes to decision, he's the head. Whatever he says goes. Now, what is it that we should do as a people, or what are you doing as a political leader to kind of educate our women, especially those in rural Liberia, those in the interior of our country?
Well, again, I'll be repetitious here. It starts with all of us. And I'm sorry I didn't get your name, so I can't refer to you. Can you?
Francis Dan.
Correct, Francis. Yes, Francis. It starts with all of us. We have all got to take responsibility for where our country is today. All of us. I took it upon myself as a private citizen, even before I got involved with politics and policies. I built a school, a massive school, and I gave a ton of young people who I don't know from anywhere. They are not from the same tribe as me. They are not from the same village as me. I gave them an opportunity to be educated. And for most of my adult life, I've been providing scholarships. I've been helping women's group, giving microloans, and I've been doing what I felt is necessary to advance our people. And so we all have to take some level of responsibility, which I know most of us do, because when our people do not have access to jobs, you guys, especially those in the diaspora, you send money back home to your families. That's your social corporate responsibility wing of your life. So you don't have to give to other charity. You give to your families. You support your families, your brothers and sisters. You support them. You pay their rent. So what can we do? If I'm leader of Liberia, I will make mandatory law on education that all child born in the Republic of Liberia must be in a schoolhouse during a certain hours of the day. It would become a mandatory law because it is wrong for us as a nation to continue to keep our people in the dark and think that we have a better future ahead of us. It is wrong. We will encourage our women, open an agriculture bank to support those who are interested, who are involved in farming and small scale micro agriculture projects, and make sure we create a scenario of getting their products from their farm to the market. Because by the time the women then take their goods from the market to from the farm to the market, it's full. The pepper ratting, the okra. So the people are having a hard time economically. This is my version of how we can empower our women. You give them microloans because the women are the ones who, when there's no job, the husband don't have the job. The women got to go find whatever they can to sell to make sure the rent is paid, the food is on the table, their children got school to go to. And then when the children's sick, they also got to go in the lapa here and take money out to go carry the children to a doctor. So it's a lot of burden on our women. And this is why it also urged me to know and hear these hate languages against women, to hear that women, asking for too much by saying that, by suggesting 30% is not enough. If I was asking for 50%. I think 30% is too little. 50%. And it's not too much to ask. So what do we need to do to empower our people? Create laws, strong laws, make sure they're enforced. And that means that we have to pay our law enforcement officers their rightful salaries so they're not taking bribes from people so they can enforce the law. Because when our law enforcement officers are paid the wages that they can live on and sustain them, their own lives, the lives of their family members, they will enforce the laws. And sorry, go ahead.
Madam Cooper, okay, let me piggyback on, of course, you're talking about the law. Law should be, law should be on the books so that, nobody gets a free ride once it's there.
Exactly.
Yeah, equitable so that nobody has to be crying for something that they truly deserve.
Exactly.
Let's piggyback on the issue of Rwanda. You talked about Paul Kagame, 63%, and even the someone will call it ruthless, or what he did with the religious leaders. You got to go back to school. If you don't have any business beyond the pulpit, make sure you are there. Your credibility is at stake. But then my colleague Francis Dan just talked about the church. The Bible says the men are head of the church, the Christ is head of the church, and that sort of thing. Sorry, I can't quote it verbatim, but the fact that many will say, even in Liberia, the churches will say the man is the head of the family. So without even explaining to them, what does that actually mean? Does that just mean that the man should just rule, whatever he says goes? What do you think?
Look, I'm a religious woman, but I keep my religion to myself because when you're in a position of leadership, you want to make sure you respect the rights of everyone else to worship. So from my view, look, the Bible is a book that we follow, at least for me. It's and my colleagues follow the Quran, and we read these two books, and I've studied both books, the life of Muhammad, the creator of the Quran. The Bible says man is head of the home, or man is the head of the family. But when you live in a world where our men has been brought down to the most common denomination, men in the Bible also said men are made to work. And when a man is not working and he has a woman who is bringing in the resources, there has to be some adjustment made to not woman, like you said, you asked me a question, women want to be men. No, I don't know of any woman I know that want to be a man. I'm a very strong woman on my own, but I would never want to be a man. And that is why I want to be referred to in my constitution as a she and not a he. And so we live in unusual times where 85% of our general population do not have jobs in Liberia. And so who's feeding the family today? It's not most of the men, because the men don't have work. Men were made to work. And when a man doesn't work, he gets frustrated. He leaves because there's too much frustration and burden on his head. The women are left to run the household. So when no man in the household, so that means the woman will not take action. She will wait for a man to come take action in the household. The women have Black women and women of Africa, women of Liberia, women of other countries. They have been taking the man's role for a long time. Because when our daddies are frustrated, there's no job because the government has failed to provide job for him. Our daddies leave. They go till it's small, small thing to make them forget the problems. And so women have been running their homes for a long time. A lot of us grew up with single mothers, but that doesn't mean we're less of a human being. But we understand now that if a man is not there, you step up. When a man cannot do the job, you step up as a woman. And so to castigate those women to say they won't be men, it's not fair. So to have a country where women are running the show and don't give them credit is not fair.
All right,
Because
we have a question. We have a question from colleague Joe Batwa.
Yes, Madam Cooper, I heard you saying that you suggesting that you prefer legislation to ensure women's participation
right.
in the political process, which I appreciate. But you are a political leader and you are being involved in post-conflict politics. You have been very active.
Right.
Have you been mainstreaming with organizations, civil society organizations, headed by women or women associations, like, for example, the Female Lawyers Association of Liberia, AFL, to ensure, because legislation sometimes comes through mainstreaming with the legislature. You
Right.
don't have to be at the level of the Senate or the House of Representatives to ensure that a piece of legislation is passed.
Right.
So have you been mainstreaming with women organizations to ensure that such grandiose dream is realized? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Cully. We have been working. I'm connected with most of those women, most of the women in the Female Lawyers Association, and we communicate constantly about the various activity. And I'm a woman leader, but I'm not just there to lead women. And when I put myself forward and say I want to be a leader, I was keeping in mind that Liberia is a country of 5.3 million people with both male and female, young people, elders, disabled people, and other minorities live in this country. So I have to position myself to be a leader for all people of Liberia, not just women. But it's very important as a female to support the women's agenda because that's very important. I can't sit in a seat or be in a place have this leadership potential and not support the struggle. And now, to your question about relating to other organizations, the Female Lawyer Association is a wonderful group of women who could use more resources to push more of the agenda. And that is the biggest challenge that women and women groups have in Liberia, the lack of access to resources, because we have current male-dominated administration where women are not making decisions. So the resources are not filtering down to the women's organization and women in general. And that's something that has to be changed. The next administration, granted, is my administration. We're going to see to it that women have access to resources, and we must have institutions that supports those organizations that are doing good for the women's groups, or even for the youth group and the elders. Those are demographic of people that I'm very concerned about. How old people don't have retirement, their pensions, it takes forever to get. So we have to support it across the board. But with the Female Lawyers Association, yes, these women are amazing. They're giving pro bono work to so many different organizations, civil service, and just general organizations. They give their time to. And how do they work? How does it work with regards to the House, the lawmakers? We have got to connect with them also, which we tend to do all the time. That's why I fought in 2021, 2020 to get women elected into office. To take, for example, Boto Cannon. And my dear friend Edith Gunglo, where supposed to be here, we were fighting for these women to take to take their seats in the Senate. Boto Cannon got in, and we're fighting for Edith, who was vying for Nimba County, and several other women across the country. It didn't happen because the women did not have the resources. So it all boils down to women having there's just a lack of resources in the women's world. And even the Female Lawyers Association, they are giving so much time doing pro bono work and those women still have to make money to take care of themselves and their family. So we continue to keep the dialogue going and see where we go with it. And we have to get more women in the House of Upper House of Senate and the Lower House of Representative.
So, Alpha, let me come to you, Alpha. You've listened to what Madam Magdala Cooper has said, and of course, she's attributed some of these things, of course, to the Constitution which she holds in her hand. Of course, the Constitution is in the Nigerian parlance is no balance, so to speak, because
Right.
things are slanted in favor of the men.
Right.
And of course, everywhere she says she sees as he, and there's no mention of she. But what do you think we should be doing now? Now that we know the root causes or the cause of some of these things, like you said, you talk about tradition, you talk about education, but I think the intersect somewhere where is people are now accepting of women to head anything, and the stereotyping, like you talked about. She talked about, because people are illiterate, they don't even know their own rights, so they can fight for something that you don't know about. So, what would you think we should be doing at this time now to correct the wrong that has been plaguing Liberia for all these years?
I mean, by even mentioning that, earlier I was listening to you asking several questions to Madam Cooper, and you kept saying women are afraid that, women want to be women. I mean, women want to be men. That alone is a stereotype that sets a very negative agenda against women who want to participate in politics, because everybody is afraid to lose his or her position. If that message is pitched in political times, you send that message consistently against a female candidate, against a woman candidate, there's a likelihood that many men will not support her, because the perception is that men are authoritative. They always feel threatened when their position is contested for. So just by driving that kind of message during elections creates a certain bias against a woman candidate. So if you say women are participating in the elections, they want to take position because they want to be men, they want to take men. A typical traditional Liberian man who is so concerned about his manly posture, about his authority as a man, will feel weary, will feel unsafe, and he might not consider the the credential, the credibility, the kind of charisma that this woman brings to the table as a leader. He will be worried about this woman trying to take over his position as a man. So it brings in that traditional bias. So I just thought to argue that just by even covering this kind of argument during elections tend to put the woman at disadvantage, because in a society like ours, men will always feel threatened when their position is at stake. Now, to the issue of the numbers show that we are not performing nicely when it comes to giving opportunities to women to participate. Now, if you look at the numbers in the 2017 elections, according to the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, you get to understand that the major political parties in the country, like for example, the Unity Party had just 70% women participation. The CEC, which obviously turned out to become the winner, had 11.5% women participation. Even though we had a law, the elections law
Right.
leading to the 2017 elections,
Mhm.
show that we should endeavor to ensure
Mhm.
that at least we have
30%.
30% women participation. I mean, or women participation.
Yeah.
So you can see we have not made significant efforts to ensure that this 30% is ensured because of the language endeavor to ensure.
Right.
So like she argued, like Madam Cooper argued, and I think I will agree with her, from the language of the law, when you use a certain language in the law, it creates an interpretation of ambiguity. So when the court should interpret that law, the court will have to interpret it using different standards. And the text, when the text creates ambiguity, then the court will interpret it on the basis of the factual situation. So if you say that political parties should endeavor to ensure, I mean, I have political party, APP, Alpha Political Party, and I endeavor to ensure that I have 30% female representation on my ticket. But the condition in my party did not motivate women or more women to stand up, to come up because of these gender bias that are that are already entrenched because of these disinformation and hate speech messages that are always going around and trying to create a serious stumbling block for women. So one key thing we could do in election law is to change the endeavors to ensure, change that language. Legally, you change that language and using shall. Instead of saying endeavor to ensure, you say political parties shall ensure that they should have 30% female representation. That's one thing, because for a political party, like say, for example, the Unity Party of the ALP or the CDC, these are major political parties now in the country, or the Liberty Party, if you say every political party shall ensure 30% female participation, it becomes mandatory. So one way we could trigger some kind of change is by ensuring that we change the language in the elections law, which would interpret that political party must have 30% female representation. That is the first step.
Alpha, who makes those changes? Should they start from NEC or start from the courts?
The law is written by the legislature.
Okay.
It's the legislature that passed the law. I mean, it might be written by NEC and NEC by the executive, and the executive will submit the bill, to the requisite house, whether the Senate or the House of Representatives, and obviously it goes through the political process and it passes into law. So, by our governance structure, the legislature must pass every law, even though executive orders are passed, but certain laws, especially when it has to do with certain constitutional rights, it should be passed by the legislature, or it is enshrined in the Constitution, which should be done by referendum. So referendum is a pretty much complicated process. So you don't want to go through referendum to include it in a constitution. So you can include it in a statute, which is the election law, and ensure in the elections law you have that every political party shall ensure 30% female representation. Then it makes it mandatory. Then that's the first step. The second step will be, or may be, whether or not we have more elected female officers or female representatives or senators, because you might put 30% female on your ticket, but will the 30% female, or will 10 or 15% of this number be elected? That's the next argument. So what next can we do to ensure that female politicians or women politicians are actually elected and become lawmakers? Because the more women you have as legislators, then they tend to streamline gender equity arguments, and then their arguments will become more visible on the floor, and then they can use their political positions to influence more laws and influence more changes that would benefit those who are more like at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to discussing politics. So the only way we can streamline more political discussion significantly is by ensuring that we have more female representation or more women participation in the legislature. And how do we do that? And I agree with Madam Cooper, we should strengthen the laws a little bit, take out these ambiguous phrases in the law to ensure that we have more opportunities and a better environment for women to participate, to probably compete. We're not saying that you're just going to give it to them on silver platter, but make the condition favorable for them so that they can come out, so that they can participate, so that they can feel more vigorous and more elated to participate in the process. And it is only the laws that can give them the community, the kind of environment that they need to work in, because the existing cultural conditions do not favor them. The existing political cultural condition, even social traditional condition, does not favor women. I agree. There are some environment where women are becoming more, effective. I mean, they are becoming more visible. They are competing. Like, for example, my county of birth, Bapulu County, Madame Bodo Kane succeeded. She was able to break that glass ceiling, which is a good thing. We can emulate that. We can use that as a case study to apply to other communities where women have been struggling to make a breakthrough. That is another argument. But the general environment, the common the space, the political space, laws should be passed to give women a certain protection so that they can feel confident, so that they can feel a little more safe when they go into the politics. For example, hate speech against women. I mean, the Constitution frowns against hate speech, clearly frowns against hate speech. But let us strengthen it a little bit by passing some statutes that will outrightly criminalize certain speech, like hate speech that is targeting women, and even the elections law can outlaw political opponents, male political opponents who are using hate speech against women during political periods. Then it tends to get them afraid. People want to use hate speech, disinformation against their female contender or their female contender during elections. They can be a little bit wary and they can be a little bit careful to say, no, if I do this, I might get disqualified. So let me stay in the right trajectory and ensure that I do not go where I shouldn't go in order to blackmail, in order to make a woman candidate who's contesting against me to feel less important and less protected by the law.
Okay, so let's take this question. I must just announce that we have about 13 minutes to go, but we'll take a question from Swad Dede. If you don't know Swad Dede used to be the manager or the managing editor and co-founder of the I newspaper, one of the first newspapers that opened after the Civil War. In fact, Touchlight was the first, and after that, everybody went solo, like the musicians would do, right? Good. So
that was before my generation, but I think I followed him a lot.
No, you're not that old. Don't
That was before my generation of journalists.
Okay. Let us not go there. Let's deal with this topic today. Okay, we can do that one another time. Again, I'm from the DMV chapter, and my name is Sua S. Dede. I love the S in my name so much, so I like to add it to it. Sua S. Dede. Yeah. I have two questions for you, Alpha, but I'll go to Ms. Cooper first. Ladies first. We want to honor the women. We always do. And she said women are not given a chance. Miss Cooper, you said women are not given a chance in the political arena to get involved, to participate in that. But somebody would say women are given the chance in the political arena. You are a good example of that. You have tried your hand at the presidency. Madam Selig became the president of Liberia, the female president of Liberia, or the first female to be president of Liberia, and other examples of women in politics. So the question would be, don't you think, what would you say to those who feel that indeed women are given a chance in the political arena by your participation, Selig participation, government participation, and even Senator Yumley? And then after your questions are, you keep talking about hate speech against women. We can dispute that. But somebody would want to know, besides the example of bringing a woman's past in terms of multiple relationship, what are other hate speeches that you can mention that for the education of our people, so that we begin to take those hate speeches into consideration when we talk about those things? The second question for you, Alpha, is that you talk about the weaponization of message against women. But don't you think there's also weaponization against message against men as well in the political arena? I want you to comment on those two questions. Now, the last thing is, what would you say in terms of weaponization
against men? Isn't it as important as against women?
So should I go first?
No, Alpha, you gotta
No,
let me
she
go.
going first.
You
I'll
gotta let
decide
me
who
go
goes
first.
first.
Okay.
Oh, man. Well, first of all, Suat, wonderful to have you on here. And you know, it's just amazing to watch from my vantage point how you phrase your questions. Because when you ask the question, women are giving the opportunity. By whom, should we ask? The male-dominated society that we're living are the ones who granting us the opportunities.
You want me to answer that? Oh, I think I'm going to answer that.
Sorry, no. You don't have to answer it. But this is the root of our problem that exists, and I know Alpha is gonna tackle this. So I'm gonna let him do his thing after. But when the merchant ships hit the shores of Africa, some of our people are taken across the world to work in forced labors and today in countries like the United States and parts of Europe. Let's focus on the United States for now because that's where Liberians go to frequently. Black men want opportunity to be considered equal in the United States. Today you have a 50 million blacks in America that's considered African American and Africans included in that. And I don't know the exact numbers now, and I'm very upset because I like numbers. I like to quote numbers to support what I say. The incarceration of black men in America is off the chain. And black men are fighting for their rights in the United States of America. For equality. I'm an equalitarian. That's my gig. And today I'm sitting here as a black woman, listening to my black brother who is in the struggle, telling me he's giving me the opportunity. It sounds pretty awful, Swine, but I like you, so I will take it easy with you. See, if we continue to have this mindset that men own this globe called Earth, this is where the problem's coming from because women are not looking to be giving opportunity. As me as a woman, for sure, I have my own finances, so I make decisions for myself. When I'm ready, I'm like, I'm gonna build a school here. I'm gonna do this. It's not because I'm trying to be a man. It's because I have access to my own resources. And that is what black men across America have been fighting for, their own rights, because they're not like us. We can go to America and come back to our home like, bro, but they don't have the chance. And so black men are fighting. And now black women in Africa, all the liberation, the revolutions we went through to fight for our nations with our brothers. And now we're being treated like we must be on his side. So we're not asking for rights. We're going to have to figure out, we the women have to figure out that this is our show too. And we have just as much right as you do as a man. You understand? So it's not women asking for right. It's just if the whole system, like the whites have dominated the system. The whites they call the shots when it comes to global resources and where money is going, where money is not going. All white men do that in the world. And that is why when we go to conferences there, we talk against all white men's mentality. That they think they're better than a black man. No white man on this planet is better than a black man. And no black man is better than a black woman either. So we have to stop thinking that we're giving people rights. We're not here asking for rights. We own our rights. It's just a system. When the time of the crafting of constitutions, national constitution, it was men around the table. It was men around the table and men were making decisions for men. When white men were making the constitutions in the United States of America or in the UK and all these other places, it was white old men making those decisions and excluding black men. Let's not forget, it's only 50 years ago that most African nations became liberated and independent. So the issues we have at hand, I would just like to leave it at the fact that most of our people, 70% of Liberians are not educated to fight for their rights. And besides the cultural and traditional impact of tradition saying that women, they get child, must go get this. Women must be over here. The women must do this. They're bonded because of tradition. And tradition and culture was created to keep people together. As national constitution was created to keep a country under one governance system. So there's not owned by men or women. So we're not asking for permission to my brother. We got to be very, very stern about that. It's only that's why a woman like me stand up and want to liberate all the women in Liberia, make sure they're educated and have access to resources just like me. I was a dirt poor child born in Yankee River G County. I was brought to Monrovia. I saw life for the first time in the middle of the 80s. I migrated after the war to Ivory Coast, living there as a dirt poor refugee, not even having one decent meal to eat per day. I came to the United States. I worked very hard because I was determined. I had a fighting spirit. I got a free academic scholarship to go to college. That's the only way I could afford school. Because my mom was dirt poor, cleaning poor houses in America. Was she clean people toilet or clean old people then? She did not have money to put food on our table that day. I became who I am by determination and hard work. And I know there are a lot of women in Liberia, a lot of young people want the same opportunity as me. That is why I was selfless. The opportunities I found in America, I took it and I brought it home to impact many lives. Today, I took children off the streets of Liberia, dirt poor children, just like I was. And I put them in school, paid their tuition, gave them 3 solid meals per day, access to healthcare, to housing, and nutrition. And today, those children are enrolling in Notre Dame University, one of the world's most prestigious universities. See, as citizens, that's what we do to better off our people. And so those of us that have access to power and privilege and resources, we must pay back. We must make more people better than us, especially when it comes to places like Africa that's been shortchanged, setbacks, so many setbacks. So we don't sit there and ask questions like giving women the power. Women don't ask nobody for power. If only women have resources, women asking no one for power. So my brother, this is not an argument. It's just my scuba style of responding. So I yield here and try to flow back to you.
So Alpha, the question about weaponization and hate speech. Go ahead, Alpha.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of examples. Like I said, over the past couple of months, like 18 months now, we've been running a project alongside Internews. It's actually being co-financed by the European Union. So one of the work we do is to track disinformation and hate speech. So say, for example, let me just give you a classic example, weaponizing information against women, especially women in politics. Remember that in June 2009, there was this photo that was being spread on the internet. It was claimed that Madam Yombli Kanga Lawrence was a rebel, the senator of Grand Bassa County. Somebody pulled out this photo and used it that she was fighting in the war alongside Agnes Taylor, and she put the photo up that she's a rebel and all that. And that photo surfaced after she had an argument on the floor of the Senate against Senator Prince Johnson, raising issues about the establishment of war crimes court in the country. So that was a clever attempt to spread disinformation about her. That is, she does have a past of committing atrocity during the war. Therefore, she does not have the moral standing to raise argument against somebody who is clearly known for committing atrocity during the war. So that's weaponization.
But I think that goes both ways, because it happens to men too, especially when it comes to war or so on. When it comes to war or some other things besides being women issues, because those are things that go both ways, don't you think?
No, it doesn't. It does go. I mean, it does go both ways. But what I'm saying is, specifically in politics, when it comes to developing content that tend to target a specific person because of their own political position on issue, then it has to be earmarked as a hate speech. Secondly, there has been, even recently, there's a lady who, Miss Liberia, I think she's former Miss Liberia, Woki Dolo. As soon as she expressed her intent to contest in the upcoming 2023 election for the representative position, one of those districts in Monserrate County, there were a lot of photos flooding on Facebook about how she was naked, how she's wearing bikini. These are messages, these are hate messages targeted to probably defame her against the public. I mean, providing some information that tends to turn the public against her when it comes to her position. Why should you be bringing out somebody who was a supermodel, somebody who was involved with Miss Liberia? Obviously, they have to showcase, they have to wear clothes that will make them attractive. They have to do, it's all about stardom. It has nothing, absolutely nothing, to do with the person's ability to work in a certain position that has qualified. It has nothing to do with the person's ability to represent a district in proffering good ideas in doing what is right to uplift her community. So you cannot use that against the person. That's weaponization. That's spreading of misinformation or disinformation or hate speech against the person. And all of these things are done because the opponents think that by doing that will most likely make that woman candidate or that female candidate to be considered as not qualified, to be considered as somebody who is involved with immorality. And because our society tends to put women on a different pedestal when it comes to moral conduct or moralization, then it becomes an issue as to what people will say about the person. So these are just some examples that we have to take into consideration when we're discussing the issue of the disadvantages or the challenges that women candidates will often face in politics. But just to quickly go back on what I said earlier about the law and the change in the law. I was just reading just before we came on the program that was in February of 2022 that the House of Representatives passed up the bill. So it goes now to the Senate. The Senate will have to determine as to whether or not they agree with the House of Representatives on the passage of changing that language in the law that I told you about in endeavor to ensure it has actually been changed now to shall have no less than 30%. Right. So that's significant inroad if we should consider it to be. We hope it's not cosmetic. We hope that when that law is passed, it will not just be one of those laws passed, just to paint the government as the government has made significant progress in ensuring that women are given some rights and all that. Because sometimes these things are used to carry our scorecard up, carry the government, increase the government scorecard. But whether or not it will be enforced in actuality becomes another issue. Right. But I think on the paper, that's significant. And to the next question of whether or not men are equally, attacked. Yes, men are equally attacked in politics. I mean, people spread disinformation against male candidate, and obviously because people say politics is not a child's game and all that. But you have to know that politics in Liberia has always favored men because men have always led. So, and the culture, the tradition, like I keep saying, has always put men in a different category when it comes to leadership. It's always favored them. So there's no me. It's obvious to see men coming against one another in a political arena, making these statements against one another, going into the closet of one another, which is obvious because it happens obviously because men have always been into politics. We can have another discussion about that, about the challenges men face in politics. But if we should put women participation under the spotlight, we'll tell you that tradition has not favored women on many occasions, even though history shows that some of our best leaders have been women. You know the story of Chief Swakoko, the strong female politician, traditional leader, who contributed immensely to the expansion of Liberia in the hinterlands. We know what it did to structuring our political sphere or our political geographic of Liberia. Okay, so these are examples of some of the major contributions of women. But these traditional stereotypes, gender stereotypes, and also disinformation and weaponization of information against women candidates have always been and right now remain some of the major challenges that women will face in 2023. So there's a lot of things need to be done about it, and to ensure that we curb this problem and ensure that women are given some equal space to compete without other disadvantages that don't also face men.
Well, we almost ran out of time, but let's give a bonus question. When you has been here, he was before SWA, but then he's back. So we'll give a bonus of maybe a few more minutes for us to go the next round of questioning. But he has a question, and he used to work with the ELBC, one of the top newscasters there.
Now, when you?
Yeah. Hi. Yeah, I just want to hail Madam Cooper. I like your courage, in championing the cause of women back home. And I'm also happy that you number person. So I was reading the numbers with regards to the demographic ratio of women to men in our country. And
Right.
almost like tied, like 49.71% to 50.29%. And
Right.
we all know that democracy is about numbers. So
Right.
is it that more women, I mean, women are not supporting each other or, voting for other women in power? Because if that 49% were to go for all women candidates, you
Right.
have all women in parliament. So that's just a short question for you.
Sure. Thank you so much. And to your question, I don't think it's just women not supporting women. I think based on what we've discussed here, there are several factors. Sometimes men don't support men, and when we talk about whether men are receiving hate speeches too, yes, men attack each other all the time. But and so the question is not whether women are supporting women to get women, but women will need to support women, and we also need men to support women in order to get women into the house, the upper lower house, and into presidency as well. Because as I think it was Alpha that said, women sometimes have a better style of leadership, especially in the case of Liberia, where we are at our rock bottoms at the moment. We are at the worst we've seen in many decades, in many decades. And we have to be very, very careful with the decision we make in 2023 because we are at a critical crossroads is whether we move forward as a nation and resolve a lot of these issues, or do we stay stagnated, or do we just continue to regress as we're regressing right now? Within a matter of 5 years, we have regressed in every area. Every area we have regressed. And so, at this critical period of our nation's history, we must make important decisions as to what we want as a people. Continue with, you know, traditional beliefs that does not move us forward, or do we continue to put bad leadership in place that doesn't help to bring solutions to our national problems? The issues of women, once women have access to resources, women will be able to make access to resources and education. Women will be able to make independent decisions around their own lives and the issues that are affecting their lives. It's just a matter of having the right level of education and the right support base. So we always say in the conference world, we talk about the three R's: having access to resources that would help women become represented and gain the level of respect they need in a nation. When folks are not represented in the different divisions of government, they will never have access to the resources, because every time a national budget is being crafted, women's issues are left out of the equation. The children rights and needs are left out of the equation. The elders who are our parents needs and rights are left out of the equation. You got a leadership and their cronies, whoever needs are being met, but the other groups are being left out of the equation. So it's not about women supporting women. That's why women are not being elected. But Liberian women are some of the smartest women I know. I know there are great women across the world, but Liberian women are very, very smart. And the only thing I feel so sorry that we have a country that doesn't support the rights of our women. But that is starting to change, because when Magdala Cooper is the next president of Liberia, the women will see things will change. Our young people will be educated and have access to the job and skill training they need, so that when adulthood comes knocking on the door, they will be fully prepared for the job market to earn the resources and the money they need to take care of their own lives and not be beggars and handicapped in their own countries. Our children will have access to education. Our nation will have access to affordable housing and healthcare. So for me, it's not a question of whether we support women. It's just a matter of having the right leadership in place to stop this vicious cycle of poverty we have enforced on our nation, this recklessness, this chaos that we've created, and call it a system. It's a failed system that we have right now. Education doesn't work. Healthcare doesn't work. We have no roads. Look at the roads going to the airport. Our common thing like an airport cannot function. You can't even get to the airport on time. The borders are left vulnerable. Our military doesn't have the resources they need. These are things that a serious government and serious leadership will take care of. So,
Well,
Cooper, as president of Liberia, these things will be rectified.
I take it that that will be your final note because you've just summarized exactly what you've said over the last hour and a half.
Right.
Shall we go to Alpha? The final words.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, when you give the statistics, I mean, even though we have not conducted a census, I mean, we know there's this hullabaloo around the conduct of census. But be as it may, if we take the numbers as he gave them, I don't think, and I agree with Madam Cooper, that it's not about us versus them. It's not about women versus men. It's about putting qualified women on the pedestal with men and ensuring that they are given equal opportunities, and the one person is not at a disadvantage. It's like if a woman and a man, the both of them go to school and acquire education and become competent. I mean, if you put up a job vacancy, qualified person, the both of them come. Don't put one person down the scale because you think he or she is a woman or a man. So that's discrimination, and obviously our constitution frowns on discrimination. So in politics, I really think that the environment should be conducive for everyone. Right. It's not about saying that because we have more, all the women should support the woman candidate, the woman candidate, right. All the men support the male candidate. No, I don't think that's the argument, and I don't think that we should give women special preference because they are women. I think if the woman is qualified, if the woman has gone through the ranks and file and she's qualified, she can contest. Allow her to contest, and we should not create disadvantage for her because she's a woman. Cultural stereotypes or traditional stereotypes that tend to put the woman at the disadvantage of the male candidate should be discouraged. That's why we should pass strong laws. That's why even the media, journalists need to be cognizant of how they can be manipulated and they can be used against female candidate at the advantage of male candidate. And these disinformation campaigns, hate speech and all that, these are clearly strategies and manipulations of male candidates who use them against women candidates. And I think we need to be very much aware of them moving into 2023. The media needs to be very cognizant and very careful as to how we treat, these kind of contests between whatever the contest would be, whether it's a representative position or the presidency. We should look at candidates based on their qualification and what they bring to the table, not because they are male or they are female, and try to spin information against one candidate because she's a female and she's a male, digging into her past and bringing it into context when it's not just applicable to the situation, when it's absolutely not necessary to looking at what she brings to the table when it comes to the elections. But instead, go to look out her qualification and what it is. But if we look at these things and try to frown against these gender stereotypes and these weaponization campaigns, weaponization of information against women candidates, I think it will help, and will probably help to improve the political sphere for everyone to contest. And let's see whether or not women cannot beat men in elections. And I think we can have more women, representing and performing better than men in the political arena, like we've seen in the past. And we saw what happened in Babulu County. I mean, she was just a strong woman. Right. If Madam Cannon was not a strong woman, probably she would have given up and just, allowed the other contender to suffice as a winner, which in my mind can happen in other instances and in other counties.
Well, let me just say on the record that Manabuto is my cousin, so I give it. And I saw also the fight Magdala Cooper put up, Magdala Cooper for Ide Gonglo Way, and especially for Butukane when things were going. I saw your fight. I was in Liberia. I saw what you did. But thank you so kindly. And of course, this is the National Convention of ALJA, the Association of Liberian Journalists in the Americas. And today we've been discussing the challenges facing women's political participation. And let me just piggyback on some of the key points that I think I heard from Alpha. Let me just start with you. Alpha is saying about putting women on equal pedestal, so that they will be able to do the job that the men could do. And we should refrain from stereotyping, hate speech, and weaponizing information that you know about them. Use that instead of using their qualification. Also, there should be clear language in the Constitution to ensure that equal participation, or to ensure that whatever is written in the Constitution is clear to the point. Also, laws should be made, and journalists, in fact, should uphold those laws, should make sure cognizant of some of the hate speeches, and then to refrain not to be bought by other people to smear other people. Then Mrs. Magdalena Cooper, I always keep saying Mrs. Magdalena Cooper. Magdalena Cooper said that we have regressed in every area. We have education. Women should not be begging, but rather should be given the fair share, access to resources to enable them make the decisions that affect them, the women issues, children, and elders, the needs of elderly. And key thing she stressed was education, education, education. Because once you're educated, you know your rights,
Right.
and also access to resources that will enable you make the right decision, especially for the rights of children to go to school, like what she has done. So I would like to thank you all so kindly for appearing on this program. Alpha, thank you for taking your busy schedule. You're all the way in Europe, but you found the time. And Madam Cooper also, thank you guys.
Thank you very much, Hassan, for a great conversation.
Thank you so kind. I would like to also thank the president of ALJA, Mr. Joe Mason, and the rest of the team here, the organizers here at this year's convention, for putting together this one. But we'd also like to inform our folks who are watching, and other journalists, that the event has just started. We haven't even gone. This is just a minute portion of it. This is just the first start of it. We have other events coming up today, tomorrow, and then Sunday we will leave. But I think it's a great start that we are picking up on women issues. Of course, our women, we shouldn't just put them to the back. And I don't want you to get angry again, about the Buhari thing, but but I think I think we've dealt enough with these things. So on behalf of the organizers, and on behalf of Liberia Public Radio, in collaboration with Aja and my buddy there, Mazula Gizi, I'm Hassan Kew, and saying thanks for watching, and till we meet again, bye-bye.
Okay, so we can say leave studio.
Leave studio.
Yeah, or you can end. Yeah, it's here.
Oh, is it end? Okay, you end it.
Yeah.
Oh, I am not to use the computer.
Yeah, that one.
Okay. Well, folks, that's how we're going to leave it here. That's the Association of Liberian Journalists based here in the USA. 2022 National Conventions are in the base state of Massachusetts, right here next door. I am Afonso Zienso. There will be in teaming up with Aja here to bring you this Ajat event. Until then, we catch you of subsequent events to come. Have a pleasant day. Bye-bye.